Hello, Sonny, my man. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Elijah. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful,
Very
beautiful.
excited to be on the show. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. And thank you too so very much for being here, you see. I truly appreciate it. And you see, Sonny, oftentimes I love to thank my guest for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So firstly, I want to say, Sonny, thank you so very much for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you did invested in yourself. And oftentimes, my man, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some couple of months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Sonny, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Sonny, just recently I was on that same road. I was on that same road, and this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. The mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance, and immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me. Because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches, and not just mangoes now. I'm talking about ripe mangoes. It was such a lovely moment that day, Sonny. I was so excited. You see, here's my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Sonny that you are today, that alone has made it really impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing, the impact your work is having, how you're offering your solutions, your philosophies, your insight, your journey. These stuffs are amazing. And just before I sent you that request, I said to myself, I've got to benefit from these beautiful things Sonny is doing. Not only me now, but even the audience. And here we are today with the amazing Sonny. So thank you very much for doing that yourself. And secondly, thank you so very much for being here. I truly appreciate you, my man. Thank you.
Of course, no, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that story. It was beautiful.
Beautiful, my man. So let's get started. You see, I'm quite excited to have you on the show today, Sonny, for let's say two reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Sonny, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge now, but the application of it. And you see, Sonny, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Sonny on the show is for the sake of the audience. You see, Sonny, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced, Sonny, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, my man, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey, because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Sonny got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Sonny, my man, over to you.
Sure, sure. Thank you again, Elijah. Yeah, so my story, I would say, is kind of, the American dream. My parents, my mother, migrated here from Guyana when she was 17 years old. She did not have it easy. She came here by herself. And she later, met a man who, my sister's father, actually. She had my sister at a year later at 18 years old. So here's this woman that comes to America, from Guyana with nothing, having this child, with any resources, and she basically worked at a warehouse in the South Bronx in New York for, the first year of her life. And, her journey started, and she went through some trials and tribulations. Unfortunately, she had two, I would say abusive husbands, my sister's father and then my father. They suffered from alcoholism, and basically what happened was my mother had got divorced twice. 10 years later, she had me, and with my father, and then basically my father was an alcoholic also. And they got divorced due to the abusive relationship that she was in. But at this time, my mother had gotten a job at a company in Queens, New York, and my mother basically lived the American dream. She got a job from the ground up there, worked hard, and woke up 5 o'clock in the morning. Got ready for work. Got home at 4 o'clock. Used to have to come home, raise two kids, cooked every night. We had a meal on our plate every night. Cooked, cleaned, sleep, repeat. That was my mother. I owe everything to her, especially my work ethic, watching her grind and, come from nothing, to where she was now. So many years later, she eventually she met a wonderful man who my stepfather, Anthony, and they were able to save up enough money to buy a house out in Long Island, New York. That's where I reside now. Long Island, New York is a very you need money to live here. I guess put it that way. There's all different types of classes here. It's lower class, middle class, high class, but it takes a decent enough income. So from where my mother started to where she came from, and where she was able to afford to buy a house out on Long Island and afford me the proper tools to succeed in life, and an education, that was much different than what I was used to in Queens. I was extremely grateful for because this set up the road for success for me. So fast forward so many years later, we moved out to Long Island. Um, and this story, it has its ups and downs just like anybody else, and I suffered myself from an addiction problem. I was addicted to alcohol and drugs, whatever you could throw at me. And it's funny. You would think me growing up around it when I was younger and seeing what my mother went through, and with my father, who was an alcoholic, that that would be impactful enough for me not to go down that way. But that wasn't the situation. I like to say I had this disease of more. I always wanted more. I was never satisfied. And that came with everything, good and bad. And so basically, I my addiction took hold when I was very young, when I was 18 years old. I was out partying all the time, drinking, drugging, you name it, hanging out with the wrong people. My life was on a downward spiral, and I didn't know how to get out. I got to be honest with you. I spent a good 6, 7 years like that, homeless, you name it, I lived in all different terrible situations, and finally when I got, I had my awakening, if you want to call it that, both in the grips of our addiction, if you want to call it that. And my mother had called me, and she reached out to me, and I hadn't seen her in probably a year. At that time, I was 150 pounds, skin and bones. I looked terrible, and my mother was just saying, she wanted me to come home. And she's like, I don't know what happened to my son, but this isn't you. You were such a happy kid, and she's like, what's happened to you? And I hung up that phone and I proceeded to come home that day. I had the spiritual awakening. I don't know what you want to call it, but I just knew like my time was up. If I was going to keep going the way I was going to go, I was going to end up dead or in jail, And so I decided to come back home and put my tail between my legs and humble myself and, tell my parents again, like, listen, I messed up again and I'm ready to take steps to better myself. And, and I remember saying a foxhole prayer. Foxhole prayer is just saying, a Hail Mary, like, just please help me, And but I meant it. I meant it with every fiber in my being that I didn't want to live this life anymore. And the way I was living. And then finally I didn't. And I made the changes necessary in order to get sober. I met the right people. Around where I live, we have groups, that kind of meet that deal with the same type of problem. And I met others that were dealing with the same type of issues I were. And and it was a beautiful thing. My first year of doing that, I met miraculous, unbelievable people that had unbelievable stories, much more ambitious and much more how should I say, contagious than me. And they helped me, get sober, and they helped me improve my life in ways that I never could imagine. Fast forward, 16 years later, now I'm 16 years sober. Haven't had a drink or a drug in
Wow.
16.
Amazing.
I did it through God's grace, and that's my belief. I did it through the belief in my God, and it gave me everything. I met my wife through that. I went back to school, my fifth year sober. I went back to school. I went back to college. I started from nothing. And I was willing to go back older too. I was 26 when I went back, and I worked two jobs full time to work my way through college. And I went back home and lived back at home. So it was a humbling experience. Living back at home in a little room that I grew up in while all my peers were advancing. Getting good jobs. Buying houses, creating families, and here I am starting over. So it took me a while, but I went back to school. I got my degree in accounting, and later, I ended up graduating and getting a couple jobs here and there, gaining my experience, and then, like I said, I met my beautiful wife. When we started off, I was still at my first job in accounting, not making a lot of money. We sacrificed a lot, but we bought our first house. Which was like I said, for me where I came from, and here I am finishing school, buying a house, getting married. It was just like, whose life is this? Not mine, and then finally, I remember just saying, when are things going to start turning around for me, and it started to, and I had two beautiful children with this woman. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, two girls, and then I proceeded to get my experience, in accounting, and I opened up my own business 3 years ago, and it's now succeeded. I'm living a life that I I wouldn't trade back for anything. And the reason I did this podcast, I do podcasts, with from a business standpoint, helping other entrepreneurs get on their feet and helping other business owners, reach their financial goals. Actually, because I take care of a lot of small to mid-sized businesses, just helping them reach their financial goals. That when they're struggling, trying to reach profits, and just filling in the gaps where they can't see. From an accounting standpoint, I help. A lot of individuals do that, but on the other end, doing a podcast like this, it's my way of giving back. It's my way of sharing my story and giving back what was so freely given to me by others that I talked about before, who took the time and still take the time to guide me in the right direction. Because I don't do this alone. I do this with God, and I do this with the power of others that dealt with the same situation that I dealt with. So I'm extremely blessed today. Like I said, I live a beautiful life today, and I'm glad I could come on this podcast and give back and express my journey and give hope to others that, whether my mother always says, where there's a will, there's a way. and you could come back from undeniable circumstances. It doesn't matter.
So, so accurate, my man. And you say, thank you for sharing the story about your mom and yourself. And the part where you talked about your mom, one thing that stood out greatly was the fact that she's got this not giving up spirit. Always, keep pushing and keep going. No matter what comes your way, you just keep going. And that's a very important mindset because not many people think like that. When life throws curveballs at us, at many of us out there, many folks just give up on life, you know. So getting to listen to that story you shared about your mom, boy, it's very inspiring. And your story, I find it filled with so much hope. And one thing that you mentioned, you said you met with the right people. And it stood out to me that when you move with the right community, your life feels right. And look at the amazing things you're doing. It's amazing. I love it. It's amazing. So I've just gotten few questions for you, and I think these are very important ones. So let us look at it from business angle now. How can business owners use their financial statements to grow? Got it?
So yeah, so from a financial perspective, from financial statements, you have a profit and loss statement, right? You have a balance sheet and you have a cash flow statement. I feel like the most useful financials that a business owner can use, it's what we would like to call a profit and loss statement. And basically, all a profit and loss statement is, it's just showing your income, right? I did $500,000 in revenue this month, minus your cost of goods sold, right? Cost of goods sold is, say you make, I don't know, I'm just using an example, you make this container here, right? How much did it cost for you to make? The plastic, the manufacturing, that's your cost of goods sold, right? So you would put all the products that went into and what you purchased to make this product, right? And then you have all your other expenses underneath there, right? And basically that tells you a lot of where you are financially. It will tell you your net income, which is basically telling you if you're at a loss or a gain. Right, so your profit and loss guides you a lot. There's kind of standards that people want to live by. You know, depending on what type of industry they're in. I deal with a lot of construction companies, and I deal with a lot of restaurants and real estate investors. But for the restaurants and construction companies, for example, right, their payroll, right, your payroll, you want to operate at like a 40% profit margin, meaning that 40% of your payroll represents your revenue. So basically, you don't want to surpass 40%. Of your payroll expenses, and your purchases, your cost of goods sold should be around 25-30%, right? So that leaves you now, say 30% plus 40%, you have 70% right there. That leaves you 30% profit margin. Then you have other expenses that you kind of dwindle in there, your office expenses, just miscellaneous expenses. And then you got about a 15 to 20% profit margin, right? After all your expenses are said and done. That's where you want to be, and your profit and loss statement will show you all that, and will show you what's driving your business and what's holding your business back.
Awesome, awesome. Now I'm getting some free accounting lectures. It's amazing. I got that. Thank you, my man.
Yeah. No, of
So,
course.
yeah. So there's this one, then we round up. So, what challenges do small businesses face with their financial management, and how does your service solve these challenges?
Well, we like to tackle our financial management with our clients, from a holistic standpoint. And what I mean holistically, meaning like, from a all around standpoint, right? We like to hit every facet. I think the best facet that we use, to help our business owners is on a financial management, is managing their cash for them. A lot of business owners, restaurant owners, construction owners, they give us access to their bank, right? And we basically manage their cash for them. And what we'll do is, we kind of have a rule of thumb, right? If you go through your month, right, and you have say you have a profit of $100,000 this month. That's really, really good. Average profit that we deal with maybe is $20,000 to $30,000 if they're doing well. But I'm just saying, if you have $100,000, which I've seen, right, in a month, and you made that much money, right, what we would do to manage their finances also, where we're really doing it. I'm not talking about giving advice and, how to correctly manage your money. We're actually in there managing their funds, right? So we would take that $100,000 now and take a portion of that and open up, say, like a money market or a savings account where they're yielding about 4 to 5%, and add to that money market, right? Because what we like to do is, we like to ask our we like to work with our business owners to see what their dreams are, right? Not more so their goals, right? And a lot of their goals is obviously to make money, but the second goal would be to expand multiple locations, right? Multiple businesses, right? Or have multiple ventures, right? But how do you do that, right? You have to get the first model correct, right? You have to get your first business correct. You have to build that model to replicate off of. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just take their business, right? They don't even know if they're making a profit or not. When I ask people, I can't tell you how many business owners I come across, and I talk to them and I say, how'd you do last year? Do you know if you made a profit? Nah, I have no idea. It's just like and a lot of business owners just go by, if I could get paid, right? If I could if I can make my payroll and pay myself, I'm okay. Doesn't matter if I'm making a profit. And people operate like that for years. They operate like that until they can't pay themselves, and then they look at their financials and they're like, "What happened?" So we're coming in and we're saying, listen, we have the formula to do that, right? And we'll have the formula to either save you enough money where you could, invest the right way and or expand. And like I said, if you're profitable and we get that model right, we'll start taking pieces of your profit. We'll start putting it in a money market account where you're gaining interest and building that. And then I can't tell you how many times after a year or two, when someone says, I want to expand, maybe I should take out a loan and get myself into debt. And I say, wait a second, no, 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 no. I got this account for you with $300,000, $400,000 in here, that I just, basically manage for you and save for you, that to do what you want and open up another location or expand your business or whatever you may want to do, and then basically what we'll do is, we'll kind of manage your funds where we'll put recurring transfers, right? Each week we'll take $5,000 and put it in another account for them. They don't even see it. It's out of sight, out of mind. It just automatically gets withdrawn. Those are just little tips, like that we'll kind of manage. And if they're at a loss, we'll kind of, hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they're living inside their profit margins, so you have to be in a desperate position to get to that, and which we do. People don't come to us when things are good. People come to us when things are bad. So like, it's them willing to admit that their way isn't working anymore, and they're willing to take our advice. And this is one of the steps we take. Like, listen, if you want us to manage your funds and really, manage every facet, that's basically like a CFO type of role. They'll let us do it, and we've seen many businesses succeed this way. So that's one of the ways I feel the most effective way we help business owners finance and manage their money.
Wow. I never heard of that approach before. That's a unique one and it's beautiful. And it sounds really effective. Thank you for the wondrous stuff you're doing, my man. So to bring this one end, Sonny, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about everything we've discussed so far, upon your services or join your stuffs, how can that be possible?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, if you want to reach out to me, you could reach out to me. My website's precisionaccountingandconsulting.com. Okay, that's precisionaccountingandconsulting.com. You can look my name up, Sonny Grappone, on Google. You'll see my website come up. We actually have a podcast. We did about 5 episodes. We're going to start doing it again, probably in another 6 months, where
Wow.
we discuss matters like this. It's called the Profit Principle Podcast. You could look it up on YouTube, and we talk about tax and tax strategies that business owners and individuals like yourself can take that usually owners aren't taking, or individuals like yourself aren't taking. So that's what we discuss on that podcast. And LinkedIn. Usually, people reach out to me with social media. We have some precision accounting and consulting. On Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place. So, but that's the best way to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to help you with any tax or accounting matters you're dealing with.
Beautiful. Any final thought, my man? I know you've said a lot.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank you, man. I thank you, Elijah. This was great. I really appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to give back, to share my journey. And I hope I just gave people the hope and the ambition to know that, if I could do it, you can do it. Like I said, where there's a will, there's a way. It's just having the determination and being able to sacrifice, right? That's the key. I'll end off on this, when I was a kid, and people used to tell you, if you put your mind to it, you can do it, and then you're like, I don't believe that, people, but it is the God honest truth, it's just how much are you willing to sacrifice to get there? How much work are you willing to put in? Listen, there's a skill involved in every single type of job, right? There's a talent level, right? That goes along with it, right? Like you can't teach me how to shoot 3-pointers like Steph Curry, right? But there's also those guys that work really, really hard, that get to the same level or just below Steph Curry, right? So my point being is that you can't teach work ethic. It's something you have to develop, and over the years, and that's how you get where you need to be. It's all work ethic. It's how much time and how much are you willing to sacrifice. And if you're able to do that and master your craft, I guarantee you'll be able to do whatever you set to put your mind to. You're able to do. So that's all I want to share. Thank you so much, Elijah.
Beautiful, my man. So true. Thank you. So that's going to be the end of the show, my man. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing this beautiful stuff with us. It means a whole lot, my man. Thank you.
Thank you, Elijah. Be well.